What's up guys, and welcome back to the channel. In today's video we're going to hopefully get the Acty on the road today and do the oil change on the white MR2. Before we get too far into that though, I do quickly want to touch on the supercharged MR2. In the last video I took the car drag racing and I ended up having some issues with the clutch slipping. Since then I've messed around with the car a little bit, and the only time I've been able to replicate the clutch slippage is when I'm launching aggressively or shifting very aggressively. Based off of what I saw from the car, I don't think anything's broken in the clutch. I honestly just think it's a wear issue, which is no surprise because, you know, I've had this car for 2 years and I've been beating on it a lot. I did start pricing out a clutch and flywheel, and it's kind of expensive. It was going to end up being like $500 to $600 depending on the exact setup I wanted to go with. My issue is that I really want to focus on swapping the white MR2, and $500 to $600 is actually a good chunk of change for me. So my plan is essentially to baby it along. I will not drag race this car again until I get a new clutch, but I'll still do some street driving, and I probably think I can actually get away with autocrossing it, because if I take off from the line easy and then shift from first to second pretty easy, when I'm in second gear I can roll into it and not have any issues. So I'm keeping my fingers crossed that it will hold through pretty much for the next year. But in all honesty, I don't really, like, I'm kind of ashamed to admit this, but I don't drive the car as much as I would like. So between here and like the full teardown that I'll do in about a year and a half for this car, it might see like 1 to 200 miles, which is why I feel pretty confident in saying that I could get away with just, you know, driving it how it is. And I know some of you might be curious, like, hey, aren't you going to cause more damage? Luckily nothing's broken as of yet, so I'm not worried from that front. I think what's going to end up happening though is that the clutch slippage will progressively get worse, so the disc will wear down. I'll get hot spots on the flywheel and pressure plate. So in a nutshell, things will just keep wearing, but I'm not super concerned about that because long term all that stuff's going to get replaced. Now that we got the quick lowdown on this car, I'm going to drive the white MR2 over to my garage, and we're going to start doing the oil change on that car. I got all the stuff I'm gonna need to do the oil change on the MR2, and I'm actually kind of nervous for this. I've been daily driving the MR2 for pretty much the last 2 months since I overheated the car pretty bad at the track, and the compression test and everything else came back fine, and I've been keeping an eye on the fluids and I don't see any mixing. But the reason I want to do the oil change today is after a few months of driving it, I want to drain it, make sure it looks good, and I'm just hoping to limp this car along also because there's a couple months left of summer and I would love to do a few more autocrosses with it. I do apologize ahead of time, everyone. Since I'm under the car, I don't know if the lighting will exactly be the best. It's super loose. It's warm. I'm trying not to burn myself. Oh, that looks really good actually. Like, it's dirty, which is, you know, no surprise because I've driven the car a couple months. No mixing at all. I'm a happy camper. While the oil finishes draining, I figured for anyone who is curious, I'd let you guys know what I use for oil. I like Mobil 1. The reason why I like them is the oil that I get from them, it meets the specification for my car. It's a good quality oil. Also, it's readily available, which I really like. I know that if I'm in a pinch, I can mix oils. I prefer to avoid that if possible though. And the last reason is, it just so happens that all of my cars take the same oil. So because of that, I can buy them in bulk at my local auto parts store and get a pretty good discount. It's always nice saving a few bucks where I can. Here's a good look at the oil in the light, and I'm very, very happy because it's dirty, which makes sense because I've been driving it for a couple months, but it doesn't look like there's any coolant in it. Also, the coolant system itself looks like it's free of oil, so I'm happy about that. There's no metal shavings or anything. I'm feeling good, and this kind of helps calm my anxiety because, like, it's still in the back of my head that, hey, I overheated that car really bad. This doesn't make any sense that, like, nothing bad happened, if that makes sense. If you have never taken off an oil filter on a 5S, the oil filter is located right here next to the hot exhaust, so it's not exactly ideal. Sometimes the filters can be a pain to take off, which is why I like using these. I mean, there's a bajillion variations, but just some type of wrench for the oil filter. Now that it's nice and loose, I'll just take it off my hand. Whew. Last step is just filling her up with oil. Well, I could not be happier that the oil on this car ended up turning out good. I definitely plan on taking this to 1 or 2 more events this year before this winter comes and I start pulling out the engine. To be honest, it's more about nostalgia than anything because I've had this car for 6 years and this is the only way I've known it. So it's cool that I'm going to be starting a new chapter with it, but it's going to also be bittersweet because like this is my car and this is how I know it, and that's going to change. Just lots of memories. So I guess here's to the new ones that are going to be coming up as well. We can ignore this car now and we're going to move on to the Acty. I did actually have plans to do the timing belt today. Of course, nothing ever goes smooth when it comes to cars. Right over here we have, well, that's just some Loctite. The manual, that has been the biggest help ever. But anyways, we got the timing belt. This is the water pump. This is the thermostat gasket. Really cool. I got a genuine Honda thermostat, and the reason why I think that's really cool is I ordered this from Right Drive Parts. From what I read online, they have quality stuff, but I wasn't sure if it was going to be like OEM stuff. Anyways, we got tensioner, idler bearing, and then right here we have, I think this is the cam seal and the seal for the crankshaft. So we pretty much have everything besides one little piece. Right here we have the tensioner, but we are missing the spring that goes to this, and the reason that's important is that it helps set the tension for the timing belt, which is super important on this car because it's an interference engine. It's not like the 5S in this car where if you know the timing belt goes, it's non-interference, I don't have to worry about anything. In this car, I would, or van, I keep saying car, in this van, I would end up bending the valve. Most likely, it doesn't always happen, but I mean 9 times out of 10, you bend a valve. Well, it does suck that I did not get that little spring. The positive of the situation is the spring is actually really cheap. I bought one for $15 from Mile High Key. He's another K-car automotive YouTuber, and that was actually a pretty good price because I looked at other places like JP Parts. They were going to charge me about $20, but the difference is Mile High K actually already had the part here in the States, so I'll have it in the next few days versus JP Parts, it would have taken about 2 weeks to get here. Oh, also the other thing is I don't really mind because these parts cost me about $350 shipped to my front door. The next cheapest option was going to run me about $550, so this was the right choice. I do really want to drive the van again. I absolutely love it, and it's just been sitting here. So we're going to do 2 things today. I'm going to remove the drive shaft. The U-joints on that are actually super bad, and my plan there is I'm going to remove the drive shaft and then put the car in 2-wheel drive. The way that the 4-wheel drive is set up on this system is a little bit different than I think most trucks in general. On this van, the way it goes is right here is the transaxle. From the transaxle, right here we have the prop shaft that goes to the front differential. Right there is the front differential, and then you have the axles coming out of it. Before we get to the drive shaft removal, the van has a selector so it can go from 4-wheel drive to 2-wheel drive. Right now it's in 4-wheel drive, so we're gonna go under the van on the driver's side rear. We're gonna look for the drive shaft, which is pretty bad, but the bigger thing is right here, this little thing is the selector. So the way you switch it between 2-wheel and 4-wheel drive is you undo this bolt and then this will switch down, like you can rotate it. Right now it's actually in 4-wheel drive. It's really hard to see, but there's a 4 and then at the top there's a 2. So whatever number is on the bottom, that's what it is. So right now it's in 4-wheel drive.
Just to show you guys the difference, the car's in 4-wheel drive or van's in 4-wheel drive. You can see the drive shaft moves. Obviously, it has some issues, but yeah. We twist the little bolts. It's now in 2-wheel drive. I'm gonna be moving the tires, and as you can see, nothing. This stays still. It's actually a really cool design. So now to lock it back in place,
Well, I don't think I'm actually going to remove the drive shaft today because one of the things I was looking at is that when I remove the drive shaft there, it looks like that fluid might spill out from the front differential, and I don't want to ruin the front diff since it's good. And there is the secondary side to that if I was to remove the drive shaft today, I wouldn't reasonably get a new one or get the situation, I guess, fixed or whatever the solution is. I wouldn't have that until August, and the reason for that is my July car fund is already spoken for because I have to pay insurance on all the cars. So I have like 20 bucks left over, and I can say with certainty that would not cover the cost to get a new drive shaft or get the U-joints replaced. So that means I wouldn't get it till early August, which is when I would have my August car fund. The other thing I do want to check up on though is how does the timing belt look? Well, to check the timing belt, I was actually looking around here to see if there was some panel or something that's meant to inspect it, and I don't actually see anything. So what I'm going to do is pull off the engine cover and I'll look from up top to see if there's an inspection panel. Well, as I'm kind of looking around, I don't see anything that screams, hey, I'm a panel to inspect the timing belt cover. Because I was thinking if there was something, it'd be right there, but I don't see anything. So I'm thinking I'm gonna take off the wheel over here, take off the passenger side engine mount, and then from there, I should be able to take off the top cover and then just take a peek. We're gonna take off the side engine mount, and then from there, there's a few bolts, and I should be able to take off the top timing belt cover. Unfortunately, the camera died as I was pulling this piece off, and the reason that's important is I think this is going to be a bit of a pain to put back on because there's a lip on the top of the timing belt cover, and something I didn't know. Right there is the valve cover, and the valve cover actually has a little lip on it. This is supposed to be underneath that little lip, and as to how I got it out, it was just sheer force, to be honest with you, so that's gonna be fun. Although I might just take the valve cover off to put it back on. Anyways, on to the timing belt, and I think I'm really lucky. The reason is the belt has a lot of play in it, and that just is simply due to the fact that it's old and worn, so the belt has stretched out. I'm gonna play it safe and just not drive it till I do the timing belt. I'm honestly not surprised because prior to Jesus getting it and then giving it to me, I do know that some work was done to it, but based off of what I've seen the van as a whole, I knew the odds were slim that the timing belt had been done recently. Because I'm going to be back in a couple weeks doing the timing belt, I'm just going to throw everything back in loosely just so I can drop the van on the ground. I won't film that mainly because I'll be filming that in a couple weeks, but also the other side is today's actually going to be super hot. In the Pacific Northwest, specifically in Oregon where I'm living, we're supposed to have record highs of around 105 at 110. For those who aren't familiar with the Pacific Northwest, especially the Willamette Valley, that's like scorching hot to us. 90s is like, oh my God, you know, we're typically, you know, in the 80s and stuff like that for summer. So I'll just put this stuff back together, call it a day. I'm actually really happy I checked. Obviously I know like the condition of the timing belt now, but what kind of gets me more is that I'm a really hands-on learner. So to be able to go like in there and start taking stuff apart and seeing how it fits together, it really helps me a lot. And it's actually going to prepare me when I do the timing belt in a couple weeks, because I have read the manual and I watched a few videos on it, but for me at least there's a huge difference between like reading about it, watching it, and actually doing it. It just makes me feel a lot more confident. On one last positive note, I'm actually very happy to say that we finally have parts for the Skyline coming. Jesus and I wanted to start the Skyline in June, July. What's been holding us up is that we didn't have parts, so finally the parts that we ordered, they ship. Considering they're coming from, you know, other countries, we should hopefully have that stuff by the end of July, maybe early August. Shipping is kind of hit or miss right now, but what all that means is that by the end of July, hopefully we're starting on the car, which makes me excited because I want to see her back on the road. And there is the other side that getting the Skyline fixed would make me feel a little bit better, because I still do feel a little bit guilty, or a lot guilty, at the fact that I was the one driving the car when the head gasket went. Anyways guys, not much else today. Thanks for watching. Let me know your thoughts on anything in the video, and I'll see you guys in the next one.